Hello guys, it's Bethany from Beth and Books and welcome back to my channel. It has been a hot minute. Obviously COVID-19 is a thing. We have been in self-isolation for almost 2 weeks now here in New Zealand, and I realised this is a great time to get back to my booktube channel. I've actually really missed it. I just had to put my job first for a second because I moved from a primary school to a secondary school, so it's quite a big shift in perspectives. And in my PJs, I remember my very first video on this channel, I said something along the lines of, this is for fun, and it truly is. And as soon as I start making it something that I'm not, it's not going to be true to me. And I've just been living in my PJs until at least midday when I go hungry for lunch. So this is me, my true form. I have not yet evolved. But I thought today would be a great opportunity, considering it's the beginning of April, to talk about the books I read in March. So sorry this is coming out a bit late, but I just don't feel like I can move on if I don't recap my last month. And last month was a wild one. I read 16 books. Ooh, the sun is coming up. Look at that little sunlight effect. I'm just gonna leave that there, very whimsical. So 16 books. I would say I don't know how I managed that, but I do. The last week of March, it was self-iso time, so that was me. And because I've read 16 books, I'm not going to go into huge depth around what the book was about, but here's a wrap up. Anyway, book number 1, The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. I gave it 3 stars. I did not like it as much as I wanted to. Essentially, my big issue with it was the last half of the book. I found it got so unrealistic, and I know that's like a weird thing to say about a fantasy book, like yeah, of course it's unrealistic, but it got to the point where I couldn't even believe some of the events that were happening. It was just way too left afield for me, whereas like the first half of the book, it was more of a contemporary with a bit of magic, and then the last half of the book was full on fairy tale, and I'm not a fan of that, so that was just a personal taste thing. Book number 2 was Rainbow Rowell's Simon Snow's book 1 in this series called Carry On. Mouthful, got that. I absolutely loved this so much. 5 stars. I just absolutely adored the satire that I thought was kind of woven throughout. I was worried it was going to be way too similar to just Harry Potter but gay, especially because in Fangirl I thought the parts of Simon Snow that were written in were the weakest parts of the book, but now that there's a whole book dedicated to it, I actually really liked it. I just apparently really wanted, how many times can I say really? Apparently I just wanted a book that was just mushy and warm and really super cozy, and I'm so happy that I read it and got it, and it actually has led me down a rabbit hole to find more queer books to read because it was adorable. Book number 3, I finally read Wildcard, which is the second book in the Warcross duology by Marie Lu, and I gave this one 3 stars. Not my favourite, I definitely preferred Warcross a lot more. I thought this one fell flat for me because there wasn't anything new really added to the story, and by that I mean, yes, we're in the same world, and yes, our main characters are still our main characters, but for some reason I felt like it wasn't as exciting. Like, that's the only way I can put it. However, I did really appreciate, gosh, I've forgotten their names now. Was it Erica and I forgot the boy's name. I did appreciate their relationship, the main characters, how it wasn't just like a typical YA love story where one person does something wrong and then, oh no, how could they do that? No, you're not perfect. But in this case, you know, they kind of stuck together, which I thought was really commendable to Marie Lu. I appreciate that. Book number 4 was Permanent Record by Mary H.K. Choi. I gave this one 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. I read her Emergency Contact last year and fell in love with her writing then. And so I got this one out from the library once and returned it. I think I was afraid that I wasn't going to like it as much because I had such high hopes. But then I got it out again, read it, absolutely adored it. I just love the way Choi writes about romance, and I think I also got a little bit of a soft spot because she writes about, she often writes about Asian people. In this one, I believe they were half Korean, and my partner himself is full Thai, and I completely understand that they are not the same ethnicity. However, it's nice seeing some of that representation, as well as the fact that often the other half of the partnership is white, and obviously oh, that's me. So I feel like I can really connect to them. They're just so relatable. If you haven't read Emergency Contact or Permanent Record and you just feel like a really nice contemporary romance, I fully recommend. Book number 5 was Margaret Owen's The Merciful Crow, which is book 1, and I believe it's a duology at the moment. This one is another one I got out from the library, then returned it, then got it out again and loved. So maybe I should just stop returning these books to the library. 5 stars. I thought it was such a gripping story. I really loved how the main character embraced her, shall we call it, her sexuality. Not quite right. How she really embraced her sexual desires. Like there's a couple of moments in the book where people from her family are kind of like tittering and giggling because, you know, she got with a boy and she essentially was like standing up for herself and like, yeah, and what? I just love that. I don't think I'd seen a character that was so just like, yeah. And yeah, I just loved the main character. I'm so annoyed I can't remember her first name. And then the rest of the story, I think I could criticise how there was a lot of travel and sometimes not a lot of action, which would normally be an issue for me. However, because I loved the characters so much, I was really entranced by how they were talking to each other and that sort of like relationship building part of the story. So I really loved it, and I actually got that recommendation from Reagan from Peruse Project here on YouTube. So thanks, Reagan. Okay, book number 6 was my least favourite book of March, and it is Dead Girls Society by Michelle Chris. 2 stars because I thought that there was so much promise. It's about these girls and there's 5 of them and they get given these dares and they've got to complete these dares, which are quite like deadly, and if the person wins they get this massive prize supposedly, and it just fell so flat. I was so bored. I was mind-numbingly bored out of my mind. And although that I thought that the idea was so cool, I also had quite an issue with our main character in that she has, what was it? Not leukemia. I'll look it up. The one where you've got a problem with your lungs and she's constantly got to be careful of her breathing and stuff. And I don't know if she had someone properly like read that. What's it called? Like with an own lens. Like someone who actually had the illness got to read it, because I don't think she portrayed the illness as well as she could have. Kind of like John Green Settles All the Way Down did a really good job of talking about anxiety. And this one had such an opportunity again to talk about whatever illness it is. Future me, write it somewhere. But yeah, that's all I can say. I was bored and I don't think the representation was probably as accurate and as whole as it could have been. I've lost count of where we're up to. The next one I read was Ariel by Gath Nix. This is book number 1, and this is a book that I remember being recommended when I was in primary school. Unbelievable. I was 13. My great friend, shout out if you're watching this, Shaden, you'll recommended this to me, and this is a book that I enjoyed. I gave it 4 stars, but I think I would have enjoyed a lot more if I was younger. I really loved the whole necromancer aspect of the magic to it. I loved the world building, but there was just something in it that stopped me from being fully engaged, which is why I dropped the star. It wasn't anything huge. I think it was just a personal taste thing for me. And then we get on to my favourite book of all time. I discovered it, my favourite book, and I actually own it. Lana, stay. And it is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I just loved this so much. So obviously 5 stars. Where do I begin? Essentially, this is a book that I had to come up for air with, I would read maybe 30 pages and I would put it down. It took me a whole month essentially to read this because I just had to like wallow in the beauty of the world. And this book isn't a book if you're wanting heaps of action. This book for me, the reason why I love it so much is it reminded me of why I love reading, the whole atmosphere of it. It's talking about, it's set in lots of different magical places, and it's about discovery and talking about how books can transport you to these worlds. And I just thought it was so beautiful. There was times where I was reading it and I'm like, that's why I read. This is why I read. Ezra is going around and he's discovered these places, and it's like, yeah, that's like us. When we read, we discover these new places. I just can't wrap my head around it. For so long, people would ask me, what's your favourite book? And I'm like, I don't know, I have so many of them. And I would give some sort of, Harry Potter, which is great, but definitely not my favourite books now that I'm 23. But this is my favourite book of all time, just putting it out there. And then I went on to finish Ariel by Sylvia Plath. This is a poetry collection I was meant to read at university. How many years ago? 1, 2, at least 3 years ago I bought this. In fact, it's still got the price from the university bookshop on it, which is hilarious. And I started reading this last year and I only finished it last month. Essentially, I moved, forgot I started reading it, put it out of my box, put it on my shelf, totally missed the bookmark that I had in it, and then discovered it again. So I finished it and I gave it 3 stars. This book was written when Sylvia Plath, I believe, was on her deathbed. She knew she was dying, and so it's quite morbid topics in here, and they are written about very nicely. And I wish that the second half of the book was different to the first half of the book. Let me explain. So first of all, her writing style is understandable, which I really enjoyed, which is I think why I got through, a decent chunk of it before I put it down. But then what happened is the topics are still a lot revolving around death. And so it got a bit repetitive, which is why then I wish the second half was maybe something a bit more hopeful, or something a bit more like maybe about what's on the other side. Like, I can't critique Plath. She was on her deathbed. Like, of course that's what she wanted to write about. However, look at my frown line. Guys, I'm only 23. So yeah, 3 stars for Sylvia Plath's Ariel. Oh, now we're getting into the books I actually have with me still because I can't go return these to the library. The next book I read was Radio Silence by Alice Oseman, and this I gave 5 stars. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it had very strong Eliza and Her Monsters vibes, which I also gave 5 stars. It's about this boy who writes a podcast and a girl who is a massive fan of it and draws art, and then they come together without realising that they are who each other's are, and it's just one of these stories where I just got completely wrapped up in it. I thought the characters were so realistic and I loved the friendship. There is not a romantic relationship between our main female character and our main male character, and it's made so clear from the very beginning, and I really appreciate that. I do not think we see enough strong male-female friendships in here, and considering a lot of my close friends are boys, it's something that I've really missed seeing represented, and so I'm very happy that Oseman did this, and as soon as I can, I'm actually going to buy a copy for my own shelf. And now the next one might be a bit controversial in that I consider it a book read. When I DNF a book, I still count it as read, partially because on Goodreads there's no DNF shelf and I don't want to read it anymore. So the only way I can put it down is if I've read it, so that's that. But also, if you've given a book a try, I think it deserves a review, because if all the people are seeing are reviews of people who have fully read it, then maybe that's not a holistic viewpoint on the book. So the book I'm talking about is Red Sister, and I DNF'd this. And even though I DNF'd it, I still rated it 3 stars. That might be really controversial, but it's what I probably would have given it if I had continued the book. And you're probably like, but Bethany, you give other books that you have finished 3 stars, why wasn't this worth finishing? And I think it's because sometimes with books I just want to keep going because I hope that they'll be better, or I'm so close to finishing when it goes downhill for me. However, in this case, it is a big boy and I got 100 pages in and I just wasn't interested in finishing it. If I did finish it, I might have given it 3 stars, but I just wasn't in the mood, and the story wasn't delivering what I wanted it to deliver. It follows our main character, who is essentially, I think, raised as an assassin. And I say I think because that was the whole reason I picked up this book, and I did not get that vibe for the first 100 pages. And because that's what I wanted and I didn't get it, I didn't want to keep going, because that's the logic that was in my brain. So hate me if you want, but I DNF'd this book and I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. We're getting towards the end here, guys. I then read Paper Towns by John Green, and this is a book that had been the longest on my want to read shelf on Goodreads. I think it was on there since 2013 or something really long ago. Wait, can I look at it on Goodreads? 2015. And the reason why I never got around to picking this up was A, I read other John Green books first and was giving it a break, and then B, I didn't like the last John Green books I read. I thought they were really overhyped, so this one I didn't want to pick up for fear that it would just be wasting my time. However, I think this is my favourite John Green book of all time, and I gave it 4 stars. I did watch the movie, the one with Cara Delevingne, is that who's in it? I think that's who's in it. And I didn't 100% love the movie, but again, I watched it, so it meant I knew what the main idea around the book was, and that's something I don't normally like. I hate when my books are spoiled for me like that. However, the friendship in here, I think, is portrayed so differently to the friendship portrayed in the movie, and it's just something that I really love. The friendship between, what are their names? Margot and Q was portrayed differently, but my favourite part of this was Q's relationship with his gang of friends, like his other guy buddies and the girl who joins them towards the end. I thought that was the best part of this book, the friendship. So yes, 4 stars. I then finally read The Hunger Games Excuse, this absolutely freaking hideous cover. I'm borrowing this from my parents. I think it might actually be my brother's copy. Whatever. It doesn't matter what the cover looks like, because I absolutely freaking loved the book. I gave it 5 stars. I read it in one sitting. It is one of those books that just carries you through. I read this one because I know that the Hunger Games book is coming out, and I never actually read the book series. I only watched the first 2 movies, so I don't actually know how the whole trilogy ends, so don't spoil it, please. So I really loved it for multiple reasons, but mainly I thought Peter was amazing. Sometimes Katniss annoyed me, like at the very beginning when she's like, there's nothing between me and whatever that other guy is, and then when her and Peter are trying to establish that they are in a relationship to save their asses, she's like, oh, but that boy back home. It's like, girl, you just said that there was nothing there. So she frustrated me, but I love Peter so much, and I just love the general Hunger Games. I think it's such a cool, unique idea. Oh, and I gave this 4 stars, not 5 stars. Katniss must have really annoyed me. Okay, so before we went into self-isolation and everyone was panic buying, I went to the library and I bought myself a tablet because I recognised that all my library books probably wouldn't last me, and I wanted a device that I could read books on that wasn't my phone or my laptop. So I got a tablet, and as I was going through all the apps on there, I found Paper Girls. So I decided, hey, I've seen this around. I'm going to give a graphic novel that isn't manga a chance. So I read Paper Girls Volume 1 and discovered that maybe I don't like them being graphic novels. I gave this one 3 stars. I thought the story jumped around all over the place and I just wasn't interested. That's all it was. I just didn't feel like I was completely sucked into the story. That being said, I did just finish Volume 2 because I had borrowed it and had it there, and I felt I may as well read it, and Volume 2 was better. So Paper Girls seems to get better, but Paper Girls Volume 1, which is what I read in March, I gave 3 stars. Then I got Two Way Woodson, which is book 2 in the Simon Snow, soon to be trilogy, I believe. This one I feel is a potentially controversial opinion. I gave this one 3 stars. All I wanted was more cute Simon and Baz mushy relationship stuff. Instead, I think book 2 was taken too seriously. There was a bit of a heavier plot line, and essentially Simon and Baz's relationship isn't going so well for either of them. And considering all I wanted was these two to just keep being real cute together, and that's not what was delivered, I didn't like it. I wasn't there for a massive story about people getting captured and then having to rescue them again and the aftermath of all of that stuff. I just wanted Simon and Baz. That's all I wanted, and I didn't get it, so 3 stars. And then we're finally here, the 16th book that I read in March, The Bookish Life of Nina Hill. 5 stars. It was such a good way to end my reading of March. I just, a chick lick. What? Chick lick? Lick? Chick flick. Chick lit book. I just loved this for a number of reasons. But I think the main reason is that we follow a character who is so real and tangible. Her name's Nina. She's 29. She works in a bookshop. She doesn't really like to talk to people. She has a very rigid lifestyle where she likes to plan everything. That is essentially me in like 7 years. Wait, wrong maths. How old am I? I'm 23, right? 6 years. And it was just such a fun read. My only tiny critique is that there is a romance subplot in here, and I wish I saw more of them at the end. If you've read this, you'll know what I mean, but I don't want to spoil it too much. Don't want to say anything else? Not really. It's just a book that you want to wrap yourself in a blanket, get a hot chocolate and eat some popcorn with. It's like watching a movie book form. So that is it. Those are the 16 books that I read in March. I really hope everyone is staying safe and looking after themselves during this time. And I don't just mean keeping your hands washed. I mean looking after yourselves mentally and spiritually and physically. I know I've been trying to go out every day for a skate. I'm pretty crap, but I'm getting better, you know, picking up a new hobby. But also it's okay if all you want to do is sit and lounge around and do absolutely nothing. That's cool too, you know. I know it can be a tough one, so I'm sending, you know, positive vibes and love out to all of you. Anyway, I'm super excited to be back and producing videos again. I truly have missed this whole creative process and chatting to you guys. So that's me. If you guys are new here, please consider leaving a cheeky like and subscribe down below. Enjoy all of your reading journeys and all the places you go. I'll see you next time. Bye.